How are you doing? It is Wednesday evening. It is 8 p.m. Eastern. And here we are. Ready for some Fusion 360 live stream. Wednesday evening, that means that I've opened a beer, one of my Canadian beers. So I hope that you're okay with that. This is really just you and I. Any questions are okay doing these Wednesday evening live streams here on Facebook. So any question you have, throw them in there. I'll stop what I'm doing and we can chat about that. Because see here, we got Bob in here, we got Damon in here, Gustavo is in here. Absolutely appreciate you guys taking the time to join these. This will, of course, live here on Facebook. I will also upload it to YouTube over the weekend. That's what I normally do. So just there's some different platforms, whatever we want. So these here, damn, it's funny. Why don't I call it free 60? Free 3. One of those dang foreigners, man. 360. Fusion 360. It's all good. We got Vid here. We got Ricardo. Carl. Really appreciate you guys taking the time. Yeah, so these are absolute beginners. That is really my intent with these. Just dialing it down a little bit. Relaxing a little bit. Not trying to have like a hardcore topic going along with. We got Dre in here too. Appreciate it. Thank you so much, guys. Today, this is a little dirty, but I hope that you're okay with that. Today, I thought we were going to model up one of these. So this is like if you have a shop vac, you know how you can kind of like make different. There's different attachments coming with it, and this goes a little bit with last week's live stream. Hang on, don't go anywhere. Last week's live stream, we did the AeroPress kind of funnel. So it's another plastic part, I guess. In this one here, if you didn't watch it, we talked a little bit about how we can use loft to go from one to the other. What I thought was interesting about this one was that we actually have some angle cuts on here, and just an interesting little part to kind of model up, I think. Yeah, so let's do that. I'm going to show you a couple of tips by modeling this one up that really kind of helped me when I started modeling. You can see we got William here. So it looks like my wife is using. Yeah, I mean, this is like an old one. So what happened was somebody wanted to 3D print their own attachments and was kind of like asking, how the heck do you model it up? So that's kind of like where this is coming from. So if you have a 3D printer, model, you can make whatever you want, right? Model some of these up. All right, got John here. We got Rob here. Absolutely appreciate it. Cheers, everybody. So I've talked about before that the hardest thing I feel like when you start modeling up inside of a CAD program is that you know where you want to end up, right? You know where you want to end up with the part, but the hardest thing is to kind of like break it down and figure out, what kind of sections you should break it down to. One of the things I like to do is kind of break the part down into sections. So this one kind of like have two different sections to it. It has a round tube, right? And then it has kind of like the, I don't know, what do we call that? The mouth kind of opening. And what is interesting about this one is that it's kind of like in an angle. So we can have to figure that out. All right, I can see here, Bob asked a good question. How important is it to keep the same origin location between components in an assembly? And maybe it isn't. It doesn't matter. It doesn't necessarily matter because you can use when you're putting an assembly together. Well, it depends. Because when you're putting an assembly together, you could do it in different ways. The CAD book will tell you that we gotta use joints to kind of like put all the different kind of movements together. But I have actually seen people that decided to actually draw components with where the audience is going to be in mind. So when they put the parts in together, they actually all lined up via the origin. Trying to think about a good example that I could come up with for something. I can't really think about anything right now. So if we took this mouse, for example, then you will see that there's a plastic casing and there's a metal kind of framing around here. So if I was modeling each component up in its own part files, I could use the joints to get it together, and then I don't really give a hoot about where the origin is. But I could also have, if I knew where the origin was on both of them, I could just, make the origins together and then join the origins together and then open together. So I would say normally not, but you could do it that way. All right. Dennis is here. Thong, I hope I say your name right. Hello, good to see you. Yep, Bob, we're not doing that today. But I was just planning on, we are going to do some assemblies soon on these Absolute, because we have to do that. All right, and John was thinking about doing something like this. So we got Ron here. Let's get to it. So like I said, I break this down into sections: a tube, a round tube, and then kind of like the mouth thing. But one of the tricks that can make it easier if you're brand new is to actually wait with your cuts till the end. So let's get into it, and we'll just kind of like work with it. Now, I like to start out on these absolute beginners here. Let's start out with how it is when you install Fusion. So there's two things that I do whenever I install Fusion. One, I go up to the view cube up here in the upper right, and I right click on it and I change perspective with auto faces on it. That will change how, when you're looking at the part, if you're looking in perspective versus orthographic. So when you're looking straight on a part, it will actually be orthographic versus perspective, what gives depth of field in there. The other thing I'll do is I go down here to the settings down here and I click on the grid, and I like to turn off layout grid and snap to grid. That is really the two changes I am doing to this part. Okay, so first things first. Every time we are modeling inside of Fusion, we're always starting with a 2D sketch that we then turn it 3D. And there's only two places we can do that. It's either on a face or a plane. Now, right now, we don't have any faces on our drawing because we don't have anything in Fusion right now. We do have some planes. If you go up here and click on the little light bulb next to the origin, you will see that we get kind of three planes resembling here, and they kind of like resembles the view cube up here. So when we have done that, so William is asking, if you can, please run through reopening a project file after you've closed Fusion. I'm getting okay at designing what I need to do. Okay, save. Okay. Yep, we can definitely talk about that whole thing, William, about saving things out and stuff like that for sure. So, and Robert is asking, how do you tape on extrude? Haha, you can read my mind, Robert. We can talk about that. So I'm going to start a sketch on one of these planes, and by default, it doesn't really matter which one you're selecting. You can definitely do different tricks to rotate them around later on. So I'm just going to start on this plane here. Click on that, and the first thing I'm going to do is kind of like the diameter, the outside diameter of this tube here. So I am just going to sketch a circle, and a way to sketch a circle is just hitting C for circle, just like that. And then you can look next to your cursor. You can actually see that the cursor has like a little circle on it. I'm going to snap to the origin. I'm talking about the importance of the origin. I would always start my first sketch somehow to snap to the origin there. So I'm going to left click once, and I can just scroll out, and then I get a diameter here showing up. So I'm just going to type in 32. That's what I have measured this diameter to be. And when I've done that, you will see that the sketch turns black, because it is what is called fully defined. And the reason it's fully defined is we're given it a diameter and we snap to that origin, so it's locked in. You can actually see when I hover over it, I get like a little icon here that is a coincident icon with the origin. That's very important that you make sure your sketches turns black. Now, to extrude this one out in 3D space, I'm going to hit Q on my keyboard. That is the same command for press pull. I'm going to select the circle, and every time I see an arrow, I'm normally just dragging in it. And you will see that now we're getting that 3D shape. See, we got John here. Good to see you. Grant is asking, do I know anything about 3D scanning? I know a little bit about 3D scanning, Grant. You're welcome to ask any questions you have. So, ready for the length here. I measured the overall length. Now, notice this. I'm doing the entire length of this one right out of the bat. So, I'm taking that, I'm breaking it down into two things, right? So, I'm taking that overall length, and I'm going to put that one in. And that I measured to be 145 millimeters. Just type that in. And there you have it, folks. Hold down Shift, middle mouse button. We can spin the model around. There you have a tube. Not very exciting. But let's show you here. Good to see you. I hope I say your name right. So we have a kind of a tube here. And notice down in the bottom down here, we get that history. So this we can go back. There's our sketch. We first sketched up the circle. And there is our extrusion. So at this point, you can kind of like, breathe a little bit, because you got your first thing on the screen. That's always the most important thing, to get one thing on the screen, then you're kind of like good to go. Now we're ready to start maybe looking at this mouth. Now, if you're fairly new, making this 45 or 40 degree cut, that could be a little intimidating. How do you start with that? So what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to pretend that it's not 40 degrees. I'm actually just going to create the mouth as it was flat. Let me just show you what I mean by that, because I want to show you a couple of different tricks. All right, I can see we got Gary here. Yep, I love to take everyday model items too, Gary, and model them up. It's the easiest thing, actually. Find something around the house and try to start modeling it. I think that's the best way to really learn CAD. All right, so I'm going to model up this mouth, and if you're looking at it from this end, you can kind of see that the tube diameter kind of like runs right out to the edge of that midpoint of the mouth here. So I'm actually going to go into the end point. So we had our sketch up here on the origin. We can see we still have the planes on. So I'm actually going to start a sketch on this face. So I said before that we can only sketch on either a face or a plane. Now before we didn't have a face, we only had planes. We had these three planes. Now we have a face, so we can sketch on this face here. So I'm going to go up and hit create a new sketch. And you can see that the button is kind of like clicked in, there's blue around it. And I'm going to select right on that face. Now when I click here, left click, you will see that it kind of like turned normal too. So now we're looking right at that face. Now, this is a brand new sketch. You can see that we had our first sketch with a diameter, we extruded it out, and now we created our next sketch. One of the best habits I think you can get into is create helping geometry. So I know I want to snap a line into the top of this circle here, but a circle don't have any really endpoint, so it's kind of hard to do. But what I can do is if I go up and click line, and I'm going to snap back into our origin, just like we did before, and draw a line up. You will see that I can make a vertical line up that will snap. You can see how the cursor changes. Here's a cross, and then it becomes an X. See that? That X shows you it's going to snap into the top of that. So this line that I just drew is kind of a helping line for me for the top of this mouth, or whatever you want to call it. Hey, Philip, good to see you, man. So what I'm going to do here is kind of, I think, an interesting way to do things. I'm just going to sketch a line right out in space out here, just a horizontal line going across, just like that. Now you can see that it's ready for sketching the next line. I'm just going to hit the little green dot right there so it stops the line. So we just have a line, no length, just sitting out in space. There's nothing exciting about this line at all. But what I can do is I can use these relationships down here, constraints, to attach this line to that point we just created. So over here I have something called midpoint. So if I click on midpoint, I've activated that midpoint constraint. I click on the line and then click on that point. You will see that this line snaps to the midpoint of the line, snaps to that constraint. I've talked about it in other live streams before that sometimes it's easier to kind of like draw something up a little bit to the side and then kind of attach it with these constraints. Now, looking at this line right now, you will see that it turns black. And by the way, look to my cursor. You see how I still have a triangle, a midpoint constraint. If I want to get out of that, I can just hit escape on my keyboard. And then I have the white cursor back to the normal cursor. Now, when we're looking at this line, you'll see that the line is black. And that I talked about, that's important. But this line is actually not fully defined yet. If I grab a corner and drag it, you will see that I never did a length on that line. So be aware of that. You know, you gotta kind of like, we have a tendency that when we're modeling things up, we really just want to get something on the screen really quickly and just, you know, I think slowing down a little bit of patience, it will help you a little bit. So I'm going to make this 130 millimeters long. So I'm going to hit D for dimension on my keyboard. You will see my cursor changes and it has a little, measuring kind of like bracket next to it. See, Mike is here. Good to see you, Mike. And I'm just going to click on the line and you will see it now get kind of a dimension. I left click again to place it, and then I can type in, 130, hit enter. Now this line is fully defined because it now has that dimension on it. Now I know that when I kind of like check this, that this distance here of the mouth from here to here is about 20 millimeters. So I could go ahead and create and draw another line down here and dimension that. But there is some neat tools that you should know about, even if you're kind of like brand new. One of the things we have, if we go over to the drop-down sketch here, you will see that there's an offset command. And I know when you're starting out, it's kind of hard to find all these different things. You will see that this one actually has an O next to it for offset, so you can also hit it as a hotkey. But I'm just going to select offset, and I'm going to select my line right here. Maybe not. Hang on. Okay. Offset. Oh, I was trying to select the dimension. It was this line I was selecting. Sorry. As soon as I do that, you'll see I get an offset line, and like I said, you can drag here, and then you can type in the 20, and that gives us the width of the yeah. Thank you, Damon. I need another sip of my beer, man. Okay, so 20 millimeters. Hit enter, and now that line has been defined with the 20 here. Now it's open, so I'm just going to hit alpha line or click up here, alpha line, and just snap into these two endpoints right here, and do the same thing over here. And as soon as I do that, you can see that when it gets enclosed, notice that it kind of like gets I don't know what you call this, tan color or something, that shows us this is a closed extrusion. Now I'm just going to hold down Shift and middle mouse button and move so you can see where we are right now. So we started out by sketching on this plane. We extruded it out. We start a new sketch on that face, and you will see that that face is sitting down there. Again, to rotate, Shift and middle mouse button. Okay, so this is good, pretty good. We got kind of like the shape of the mouth. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to extrude this. So I'm going to hit Q again, and you will see that the software kind of like breaks it up into 3 different sections, what I want to select. So I'm just going to select the 2 outer shapes I want. And just like before, you can see that I get an arrow, and I can drag in it one way, or I can kind of drag it the other way. Yeah, I hope, Bob. I hope I'm not the only one just sitting here drinking beer. Maybe I am. All right, so earlier we got a question about adding taper angle to this part here. And in the extrude command, there is a tapered function in here that you can actually activate. Now, this is a good function. However, you will notice that if I put in, I don't know, 5 degrees, you will see that by default everything turns red, what tells me that it's a cut. And that's the operation type. You can change that back to joint. But what you will see happens when I do a taper like that is that it applies it to all the faces, right? Like if I go -5, it becomes narrow, and you can see that it applies it to every face it can. It's on these faces on top, it's on the bottom, it's even in between here. So though that I want to add some taper on our part here, I want to add some taper to the outside. This taper command here is not really great for this, but that's okay. So I'm just going to go and turn it back to 0. Okay, so now it's all straight, and I'm going to go a little bit further with this one. I should probably measure this. So I'm just going to go to about 75 is probably okay. And I'm going to hit OK. So what do we have now? We had a cylinder we extruded forward. Then we created that sketch. Then we now have extruded a block straight backwards. Now they are attached, the two, because we had the join function. And you can always go in and edit these, right? So if you right click on them down here in the bottom, you can click edit feature. We can go back in again. So because we selected join, we joined the 2 pieces together. All right. Darren just got home. Good. You got home, man. And he got a beer too. That's awesome. All right. So Rob asks, so if I hit C, snap to the origin, and just use mouse button to set the dimension, it stays blue. No lock symbol on dimensions, but enter the diameter and hit enter. The lock icon shows up on the circle is black. Note to self, use enter key. Oh yeah, that's probably a good yes. That is probably something that I am doing straight out of. So if we go in here, start a new model up, start a new sketch on a plane, C for circle, make sure you snap into that origin, put in your dimension, and then yes, hit enter. You actually got to hit it twice to get it to snap. So that's a good note there, Rob. Okay, back to our part here. So that's what we have now. It's still what we call one body because the two are kind of like joined together. And you have these folders up here. We can definitely talk more about these if you want to. But in here, you will see if I hit the little arrow, right now we have body 1, but it's these two combined. I'm going to leave it open because we actually a little bit later, it's going to get more than one body. Now, coming back to the taper portion, so I showed before how we could taper things in the extrude, but I didn't really like the result. Be aware of that if you go to the modify, there is, well, taper or draft that we can actually apply in here. Well, it does kind of like the same thing, taper or draft, it's the same thing. So if I hit draft, it's looking for a plane or what I will call it here, a 0 surface where the angle is going to come from, and then you can select the faces you want to apply. So where the other function did all the faces. This one here, we select the 0 plane. I'm going to select this plane back here. And then the faces, I'm going to select this face. And then we just hold down Shift middle mouse button. And drag around and hit the other face. And now I can actually add a draft just on those 2 faces. So the taper, you know, in the extrude can be kind of handy, but if you want to control what size you want to use, then you want to go and find this draft command instead. So I'm going to hit OK to this, and you will see that now, if I spin it around, Shift middle mouse button, we got some kind of like some draft to the part here. So I think that is really useful. Now you might be tempted right now to start worrying about creating the hole that goes all through the funnel, because you know right now we kind of like have something that looks like something, but I'm actually going to wait with the cutting the hole through the part till the very end. So William is asking, is there, while on taper, is there a function command for a standard Morse taper? Well, I mean, standard Morse taper, is that 7 degrees? I'm not sure. I have the machinist handbook. I could look it up. So if I open up another document again, if we go back and do our circle, C for circle, click here, 32, hit enter, hit Q for extrude, and drag this part out. If we added, I think is this Morse taper 7 degrees? If I add in -7, that there, whatever Morse taper is, that would be that. All right, so William says that various tables are available. Yeah, that's true, right? You're right. Absolutely, you're right. MT1, MT4 is yeah, right. I think like if you're having a drill, is that normally MT3 maybe? I can't remember. But so that's how you would have to do that. So there's not a command where you can say MT3 and you get that. You would have to model it up just like this by putting in the taper angle. And then, of course, if you did a 2D drawing of this, then you probably would have to like put a note on it or something like that. Good question. And this is exactly what I want to do with these live streams. Absolutely awesome. Fire the questions away, and I'll do my best to answer them. This is absolutely just you and me going through this. You're the best, William. All right, so let's talk about. I appreciate it, man. Let's talk about this angle here. There's a couple of different ways we could achieve this cut, but I wanted to show you a command that I think is really important. A couple of commands that I want you to know about that I think is really important just to know exist, even if. When you're trying to model up the part that you're going to be working on, if it's something completely different, sometimes it's hard to kind of like see how you would use that. But, it's all about having the right tool belt. So we're going to make that kind of like angle there. Now, I started out talking in the very beginning about using the planes in here. And if you watch any of the other live streams, you know that up here you can create offset planes. So I could actually, if you can't find a face to model on, and you can't find a plane to model on, you can always kind of like create your own. So the offset plane up here is pretty useful to have. The way it works, if you click on it up here, if you select a face, then you can create an offset plane from that face. So many times we will use that. But there is other tools in here. One of them is a plane at an angle. And this is extremely useful. And what it does, there's a little text box next to it here, to the right of it. There's a hover over it. Should give you an explanation. If it comes back up again. Of course it doesn't. But what it's looking for, if you select that, it's looking for a line. Now check this out. If I select that top line of our model right there, then it shows up with a plane that actually looks like a little bit like an offset plane, but it gives us an option to rotate that plane around that line. This is one of those tools that, you know, you can beat yourself trying to figure out how to do something like this. But that is really a nice tool. So I'm going to place it at 40 degrees here. So it's cutting through there 40 degrees. And you could also type it in here, of course. And I'm going to hit OK, and that plane is right there right now. So I would recommend that you take 10 minutes and just kind of like, I actually did a live stream on YouTube about this. So email me, lars.christensen@autodesk.com, and say, hey, I want that video link, and I'll send it to you if you can't find it up on YouTube. But talk a little bit about the different functions in here, because these are, man, these are the measuring tapes / ruler / leveler or whatever you do in construction. These tools are extremely useful. Now, I have a plane created here, and normally when we create a plane, it's because we want to sketch on it, right? So we have a sketch on a face or plane. If we don't have a face, then we look for a plane. If we don't have a plane, we might create one of these to sketch on. But we can actually also do other things with it. And this is why I wanted to keep this body folder open here. There is an option under Modify that is called Split a Body. So right now, this is one body. You can see there's one body over here. We have two extrusions right now. We actually, there's a feature, the draft, but we have two extrusions, the cylinder and our rectangle that was joined. So that equals one body. Now we can go in and we can say we want to split that body. And it says body to split. So what do you want to split? I want to split this part right here, right, the body. What is your splitting tool? And I click on the select to make it blue, means it's highlighted. And the splitting tool in this case is that plane we just created. And you will see here that Fusion kind of like creates a round boundary shield that goes through that. And when I hit OK, nothing will really change on the screen, but you will see that I'm now getting a second body. Hey TR, good to see you. So I'm going to hit OK. And like I said, nothing really changed on the screen, but we got two bodies, right? Because we cut right through that plane, or right through that body with that plane. Now, I can hide, this is a construction plane, I can hide it by hitting the light bulb, and that goes away. And you can actually see that we do get a little bit of a line segment here. Now, you might be tempted to delete this, to right click on it and hit delete. But if you do that, notice what happened. Everything kind of like went back to where it was before we cut it. Like, well, wait a second. Now let me just undo that. Hit the undo up here, up in the upper right. So now we're back to where we were before, two bodies. So you have a tendency to look at this, all right, I don't want this body, body number 2. So we don't want that, it's waste. Right click and hit delete. But then it's like nothing ever happened. It's like all that work for nothing. What the heck? Undo again. What delete does, and it's actually pretty sweet, what delete does is Fusion looks at the feature you're trying to delete, in this case this body, and it says how can I heal everything back up. Now in this case it's not really giving us the end result, but if you had like a hole and you clicked on the inner face of the hole and you hit delete, then you will actually see that not only would the hole disappear, everything would merge up. So that's what delete does. So instead of hitting delete, I'm actually going to hit remove. Okay, click that. And now you will see I get what I want. That piece disappeared and we got an angular cut. And what is neat about this in a way is that it actually shows up here in the feature tree. Here's our split and here is our remove as a feature. So even though we removed it, it's still remembering that, right? If I roll back before that, it's back. So that's kind of nice that we have this kind of history here. So we're getting there. This is definitely getting closer to what we want. Now, The next little trick I want to show you, have a sip of my beer. It is Wednesday evening, 8:35 where I am, so beer is allowed. Another thing I think it could be interesting to show you how to model is, you see this here, this portion down here has a radius on it. Where right now, if you look at our model, we can go to the side view here, you will see that that is kind of like part of the cut. So we kind of need to bring that back and bring a radius down a little bit in here. So this is another one of these that when we're looking at the part with kind of like this curve here, that's pretty dang simple, right? Give me a grinder or something and I'll take that out. But when it comes to modeling it, it becomes a little bit like, okay, how do I do that again? So let's take a look at that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place myself on this side view here. So I kind of like looking at it from the side. And we talked about before, where do you want to sketch? You either sketch on a plane or face. Now, because that I have a plane from the origin, now it's a small plane, it's only a little small, but it cuts right through the center of our part. I actually think I want to sketch on that. So let me go back to that left view, say I want to create a new sketch, and I'm going to select on that plane. So even though this is a small plane, I can still sketch anywhere I want here. So that's all good. Now, I want to create an arc that goes from here and kind of like goes down to the bottom down here. But the bottom down here is kind of like a development of the roundness going the other way. So there is not a straight edge down here that I can select. Well, again, I'm going to show you one of these tools that you need to be familiar with. Peter, or project, hit P on your keyboard, and you get this project command. Now, I cannot project this bottom edge because there isn't really any bottom edge, right? Because it's a curve. But what I can do is I can select the two other ends of that curve right there. Okay? And actually, just to show you what I selected this edge and I selected this edge. And if I hide the body for a second, what I got is I got a purple line here and I got a purple line here that I kind of borrowed from that area. And I could actually also, while I am in project, I could actually also select this line right here to project that one also. So if I hide the body again, I got that line there. With that, kind of like borrow those edges. So I'm borrowing those edges from the body, from the model, and I'm borrowing them into the sketch that we are sketching on in right now. But these lines for me is really helping lines, nothing else. So now when I've done the project, I can hit OK to that. I'm still in the sketch command. You can see that because of the sketch palette here. I'm going to close this off. So I'm going to hit L for line, or click on the icon, and just close this off here, just like that. So now we kind of got that line, and then we're going to create an arc between here. Now, I'm going to go up and click Sketch. I'm going to go to Arcs, and I'm a big fan of the 3-point arc. The 3-point arc is awesome. You just need to know in what order you should select the points for 3-point arc. So the idea is you select the 2 endpoints and then the curve. So the 2 endpoints, I'm going to place a endpoint down here. And again, I'm going to make sure my sketch kind of like snaps to that line. That's one endpoint. And over here, I'm going to place my second endpoint. And then I kind of get the bow out of this one. Now, you will see if I zoom in. If you look at the left side of the arc, so the first point I selected, see how I get a little tangent symbol right there as I'm moving it over. And actually, I do want it to be tangent, so I'm just going to click while I have that icon. So left click to place that arc. Now you will see that though that I got a tangency here, that the line is still blue. And that's of course because it hasn't been defined. I'm just holding down my left mouse button as I'm dragging this. So I can fully define it. So one way could be to say, all right, so we need a dimension, so D for dimension, between this endpoint and this endpoint. And I'm just going to make up a number. Let's make it 15. So that's good, but you will see that it's still blue. Well, we also need to define the radius of it. So you kind of like have to go through this process. I'm going to hit D again, select the arc, and we can now place whatever kind of radius we've got. So I'm really working in this sketch environment with my body turned off. Now, if I turn the body back on, you can kind of see how this all falls in relationship with our sketch. So now I'm going to hit Q again, and I really want to select that sketch area in there. But notice how my body is kind of hard to select. I can select it right there. You see how I get the outline right there? If I move over, I get that face. If I move over, I get that face. So sometimes you can sit here and you can try to see if you can hit it right around there. Another thing you can do is hover over about where you want it to be, hold down the middle mouse button, and you actually get this little dialog box, and I can now select if I want the face or that profile. So that's another little trick. So I'm going to select that profile, and you will see that I get a little arrow showing up. So like I said, every time I see an arrow, I drag in it, and you will see that I get red, which means that we're cutting what is perfect, but it's actually only cutting in one direction. I want it to also cut over here. So be aware of the different settings. So over here, I'm going to say instead of one side, I'm going to say symmetrical, and now you will see it's going to go on both sides, symmetrical cut. Probably give it some kind of a distance, maybe 30 might be okay, and hit enter. And now we got a nice curve cut right there, going through there. So we got that kind of like curve there. So I hope that this is somewhat useful to see this. And again, this will be on Facebook. So if I went a little bit too fast, you want to go back, you can definitely find it there. And also I'm uploading it up to YouTube over the weekend. The next thing I want to do here, and we're almost done with this part. The next thing we're going to do here is add some fillets to the part. Just to kind of like round the edges. And when I do fillets, I will normally kind of wait somewhat towards the end. And I like to kind of break them down into different sections, because even if you need to have the same fillets on the entire body, many times customers will come back and ask for certain fillets to be changed. So for example, let me tell you what I'm talking about. So if I go up here to modify, you will find fillet. You could also hit F. So I might go in and select this edge, hold down shift middle mouse button, this edge, and I might also select this edge and this edge here, and then give it some kind of a radius, because these bottom here and going around this one might get one kind of a fillet. So just hit OK to that, and you will see we get the fillet command down here. And then I will go around and do the other fillet. So maybe I do another F for fillets and select this edge and select this edge over here. Maybe I make those 3, or maybe we make them 6, whatever kind of like fits within that. So I have a tendency, and when I'm doing this kind of stuff, that I will actually break down the fillets to multiple command. And it also makes this a little bit easier for the software to actually kind of solve this. So I'm just going to go around here adding some different fillets. F for fillet, maybe select this section and this section. Let's make that also 2. And then we can just leave the rest of them there, because the next thing we got to do to kind of like finish this up is we got to add the hole, right? We got to make the hole. And if you watched last week's live stream here on Facebook, you know what command I'm going to use for this. I am going to use this shell command for this. Now the shell command is pretty cool. Let me just show you first. If I click on the shell command and I just select this back face here, it gives me a thickness, and I know I need 2mm thickness. And I'm just gonna hit OK. What Fusion just did was, by selecting that one face, it added a 2mm all the way through the part. I can show you that by going to Inspect, Section Analysis. Let me select the top face here and just make a cut right through there. Check this out. It literally made a 2mm thick wall all the way around, hollowed it all out. So that's how you will make a bottle, for example, like the beer bottle I'm having next to me, is literally just select the top where you're drinking out of, and everything gets hollowed out of it. But you can actually select multiple faces. So if I go back into that feature, and instead of selecting just that one back face, I can actually select the second face, and that will actually open everything up. And now we kind of got that that hole right through that. And hit OK. And now we have pretty much our funnel there. And one of the things you will see that is pretty cool, hope you can see, is that the radiuses out here are kind of following along with the radiuses inside of it. So it's keeping that constant of 2mm. Let me go back into the section analysis just so I can show you again. So you can now see it's keeping that 2mm all the way through. It is a really, really nice command to know about this shelling command. The last thing you maybe wanted to do now, of course, is adding another fillet and add fillets to, you know, the inside or the outside, whatever you kind of like want to break those edges down on your part here. But really a nice, really nice feature. Now that section analysis also can use, I use that top face. You can actually also select planes. So I can select that center plane, and you can now kind of see half of this part here. So how we just made that curve. Now we kind of like have the same thing inside of that. And that lives over here in the section analysis. You can actually turn the light bulb on and off. Now where I hit OK to it. Last thing I'm going to do to this part now is I'm going to turn the origin off. We don't need that anymore. Right there. And then you could go ahead and add the appearance to it. So we could right click out in space and go and change the appearances. And you will see there's a lot of different appearances inside of Fusion. I don't know why my menu is so narrow. And there is plastic, there's opaque, and we can just drag that up to over our steel here, and we now get that funnel kind of like as a plastic looking object that we now could do other things with. We could go into the render environment. I'm not going to do that because that kind of like stole my live stream a little, but you could render it out, right? So it looked in real life. You could also go up to the make, and you could go to the 3D print. That was kind of like the whole idea with this, where you could now refine it, the quality you want. We talked about that last week with STL files, and then you can use your different preferred print utility. I prefer Mesh Mixer. That's what I will normally select. So it's like our model here. And then you could go into the print environment to 3D print that out. Michael asked a good question. As a best practice, can you have too many sketches? I don't think so, Michael. I really think it depends on what you're trying to model up, because I have seen models where when you open up a sketch that there's just way too much to go on in. So I love this. That's awesome. Because now, so I was going to answer another question earlier about, so now what we are finished, we're going to say we're finished with this one. Let's save it. So we're going to go up to the save icon, click save, and we're going to give it some kind of a a name, so call it shop vac nozzle, like that. I think that's good. We can save it wherever we kind of projects we want to save it in. Just going to save it in the live stream one. Hit save. So now it's saved there. If we hit the little 9 boxes out here, you would actually see that I had already modeled one up. I don't need that one anymore. I can right click and delete that. So now we have this one saved here. So one of the questions I got was how to open these up again. So now I have saved it. Let me just cancel out. So to open this one up, we just double click on it and it should open up. Now I can't remember exactly. Oh yeah, so that's what William asked earlier. Please close the project and open it up again. So that's how I would do it. Save it in there and then you can open it up. One trick I want to show you, because if I go out to, I'm sorry, Michael, I'm coming back to your sketch question in a second. If I go out to my root out here, many of you guys are probably like me, that you end up having a lot of different projects and it can be a little bit difficult to kind of like housekeeping. Make sure that you know that there's at the top, there's a recent data. I use this one quite a bit. I know a lot of other people do too. So here you can see the recent files that you have opened. Sometimes it's easier to do it this way than trying to find whatever folder you have placed it in. So when you go to open this up, so there's our shop vac nozzle. You can either double click on it or you can right click and say open. And then it should open up. William was saying it keeps taking him to the browser when he does that. Okay, I am not 100% sure about that. Send me an email about it, and or go to, maybe the better way is to go to YouTube, not YouTube. Wow, it's late. Go to Google and type in Fusion 360 support, and then send that out to the forum. I'm not quite sure why that is, William. So my point is, to go back to Michael's question about too many sketches, is, so this is all great that we modeled up this little shop vac utility here. Now, if somebody else gets this model and have to figuring out how the heck was this modeled up, that is many times the biggest issue. If you have a cluttered sketch, is that, if you have never seen this model before and you go to the first sketch, and you can, what I many times will do, if I get a model that I've never seen before, I will go down here and I will left click on this one. It's going to take me right back to the beginning, right? And then you can literally play way through how it was modeled up. This is going way too fast, right, to see anything. So now we'll just click on this one over here. So there's a sketch. Now we can't see the sketch because it's hidden over here, but if I turn it on light bulb, if you had a sketch, Michael, that had a ton of things in it, I don't know what the heck really does what. So I'm actually I would rather have more sketches. So I'm like, oh, okay, so he extruded out a cylinder, then he created another sketch, or he created a rectangle, he extruded that out, right? He did the draft, he made some kind of a plane, he split the body, and then he went ahead and he removed that portion, and then he created another cut down here, and so forth, right? So you can kind of like play through down here and see where it is. So I don't think you necessarily can get too many sketches. And it also really depends on what you are modeling for. If you know that nobody else is ever going to model your part, Michael, or everyone's going to see your model, who gives a hoot, right? If you got to send it to a customer, then it can be a good idea to sit down and kind of like think about, what would the customer come back and ask for in changes. Rodrigo asked, Rodrigo, I hope that's how you pronounce it, could I do an example on a car's panel? So you're talking about like the dashboard? That's probably not for these Facebook live streams. I really try to do these as just beginners. Now we've been here an hour, and I want to make sure that I cover as much as I can. So I'm not trying to get into like crazy shapes. John asked, with multiple parts, how do you save only one of them? You don't just save one single component. If you are in a situation where you want to only save one component, then you probably want to work with the part outside the assembly. So what do I mean by that? There's a couple of different ways you can model things up. So I don't know if you, John, I don't know if you saw the live stream I did on YouTube last week. I think it was, or the week before, with this cabinet, where I kind of like modeled this whole cabinet up with the drawers and the doors. We actually ended up using parameters and things like that. This was all drawn up in one single file. So none of these components live outside this assembly. Everything is within here. What means that when I hit save, I save the whole file. Now, of course, if I haven't changed this doll, that will of course not be modified. But if, for example, and tomorrow on the live stream on YouTube, we're going to talk about modeling around a part, so that maybe is a little bit more closer to what we're going to try to do here. If what you can do is, so this was all modeled within one assembly and never did anything outside here. Of course, I could take our shop vac here right now. I could right click and I could say I want to insert into the current design. What would mean that it's now going to be brought inside of this cabinet file. And when I do that, you will see now we have our nozzle there, that it gets a little chain link, what means that I cannot modify this file in this assembly. I would have to go out to that specific file and modify it out here. So that can assure that I can do things in here. I can save this all I want. It will never mess with the shop vac nozzle because that was a linked component. I don't know if that quite answers your question. You let me know. William was asking, how would you draw a tube and then roll it into a circle with a gap where the ends meets? How would you draw a tube and then roll it into a circle with a gap where the ends meets? I am not sure if this is exactly what you are asking, William, but there is a command that is called a sweep command that will kind of let you do that. I think if I understand you correctly. So let me open up a new sketch, a new part file. Same plane. Let's do another C for circle, and let's make it 32 here. And you could actually have multiple sketches in here. I could also make another circle. That was 30 because that was actually what kind of like how this ended out. And then if I hit Q right now, I could extrude out a 2 millimeter tube like this. Well, instead of using the standard command, turn this sketch back on, I can use, so that was one sketch to do the two circles. I could start another sketch. Now this one, I'm actually going to start on another plane. And then I could create let's create a line that goes out here. Let's create a circle like that. And let's create a line up like this. So, oops, I'm on the last line. So now what I have here is I have our two circles and then I have an arc here. If I use, so I have two sketches. If I use that sweep command, I can select that circle there and then I can select that other sketch as a path, and that will give me what I hope, what you mean, where we're kind of like rolling that tube around a corner like that. All right, Sax here. Great video. I'm still a beginner, but I have learned a ton from your short time. That is absolutely awesome, Sax. Really appreciate it. That's what these live streams are about. It's all about adding a little bit of value to the Fusion 360 experience. I know how it is, man. I still remember the frustration of going down buying a Cat for Dummies book because I was just so frustrated with it. So, all right, guys, it's 9 o'clock. We consumed an hour. I hope that this was useful. This will live here on Facebook, this video, and it will also be available on YouTube over the weekend. I'll post this recording for this, so if you want to go back and kind of like, re-see this again, maybe a few months from now, you're sitting with a problem that is kind of like close to this, and then you can reuse it, hopefully. There will not be a live stream here on Facebook next week. I am going, the team I'm on at Autodesk, we are going away to kind of like figure out what we're going to be doing for 2018. Hopefully a lot of live streams. So there will not be any live streams next week, just so you know that. All right, guys, I think I'm going to end it here. I think I got all the questions in there. I hope so. Anything else? My email address is in there, lars.christensen@autodesk.com. Hope you have a good evening. Take care, folks.